Good afternoon, it's Caroline Stevens, Seeking the Truth, and on today's show I've got Mark Anthony Taylor. We're following the saga of Epstein and his chums now, and this is the latest installment. Okay, Mark, over to you. What's happening stateside?
Okay, since we last spoke about Jeffrey Epstein, I put this document together that you've already gone through on your videos, but I thought your viewers might want to see it in this video. This was sent to about 30 news agencies just a few days ago. And what we have basically here is a proof that Jess Staley, who runs Barclays, should not be in charge of Barclays, and a serious crime has been committed. 2015, Staley told the Daily Mail he was no friend of Epstein. This was after the Daily Mail had been leaked emails from Epstein to Parliament that had been threatening Parliament if they did not appoint Staley. Now, lately, the New York Times and Bloomberg have reported that Staley was groomed by Epstein at JP Morgan. Later on in this video, or in a later video in this series, we're going to go into some details about that because it's quite interesting. Staley visited Epstein's Island in 2015, so this was well after Epstein has been prosecuted. Travelled there on Epstein's yacht.
How do we know this? Because I haven't seen a picture of Staley on Epstein's Island. Is this in a log somewhere?
This is recorded by some of these newspapers. We'll look at those articles later in detail. Okay, auditors at JP Morgan warned that Epstein was basically a bad man because he'd been in jail for running child prostitution rings, so they didn't want him involved with JP Morgan. But the woman in charge, who was Mary Callahan Erdoes, she took Staley's advice and overruled her own auditors. So her own audit department is basically worthless because the CEO has just override everything. And they got business from Epstein. So JP Morgan got rich because Epstein and his paedophile ring pumped money into them. I've released a FOIA, Freedom of Information Access request, that basically showed that MPs were lying to the Daily Mail to cover up the blackmail of Epstein against Parliament. And this has all started to blossom fruit now. I think that Staley is going to be kicked out of Barclays very, very quickly.
Well, I certainly make mention of Staley whenever I go into my local branch, and I would urge anybody watching this video and previous videos to actually take back control themselves, and when they visit their local branch, make mention of this video evidence and all the stuff that's gone in the papers beforehand.
Sure, Epstein was not working, sorry, Staley was not working alone at Barclays. The entire board of Barclays would have known what Staley was up to and how.
Why?
Because the board basically see him every day, and of course they read the papers. So you've got all the auditors and all the chairmen, because the CEO doesn't act alone, and the treasurer, they'd all know about Staley and the allegations made about him.
Yeah.
So there's obviously something seriously wrong with the entire board of Barclays. And prior to Staley, you've got two sets of Jenkins, not related by blood, Roger Jenkins and Anthony Jenkins. Roger Jenkins, as we know, as we've said before, getting tired of saying it, seems to be involved with a paedophile ring in New York, in which he was inviting Qataris to abuse children he had supplied to parties. And that's quite possibly related to Haiti. Okay, we'll just skip some of this for now because we've been through this and you've been.
Yes, because we've mentioned the two MPs before, and that's John Mann and Mark Garnier.
Yeah, and we've got a copy of the FOIA here, basically saying the Treasury did not hold an evidence session with Jess Staley. Well, there are three organisations that need to vet Staley: the Financial Conduct Authority, I think it's the Financial Reporting Council, and I think it's the PRA, the Prudential Records Association, something like that. But all of these three organisations were given power after Robert Maxwell, the former proprietor of the Daily Mirror, had stolen vast amounts of money from his own pension funds. So all of the laws were drafted after that, so anyone who lists the company on the London Stock Exchange, so anyone at the top of a company who's listed on the London Stock Exchange has to be vetted, and insurance companies and banks, all of their bosses have to be vetted by all of these organisations, and all of these organisations have oversight from the Treasury and the House of Commons, so everyone had a duty to make sure that Jess Staley was of good character, and that those duties are enshrined by law.
What's Nicky Morgan's background? She was education for what?
Yeah, she was high up in the Treasury Select Committee, wasn't she? I'm going to move my mouth close to the microphone. Yes, she was in the Treasury Select Committee. I'm still recording. Okay, so Mann, Garnier, Nicky Morgan really never bothered to answer questions about that evidence session, so we can figure it never happened, as the FOIA officer, Lauren Puckey, has asserted, and so no one did their duty. But with all the evidence that has come up, they're going to be forced to do their duty very soon. Okay, I will remind the listener that one of the key players at JP Morgan, CEO of their Wealth and Asset Management Division, is Mary Callahan Erdowes. She's a board member of UNICEF that was involved with child rape scandals in Africa. She's also a board member of the Robin Hood Foundation. And that was set up with the help of Epstein. We'll look into that fairly soon. And Robin Hood, by one route or another, has operated in Haiti, and in New York manages the American Dream Fund that ostensibly serves disconnected youths in New York. Disconnected means separated from their families. So if you wanted to keep a certain type of youth away from Epstein and his operations, it would probably be the disconnected youths.
Wow, I'm glad you emphasised what disconnected meant, because I would have thought it meant more disengaged, but to actually be separated from their families rather than disconnected just with society.
That's right.
Where are their families? Where are their families?
So basically it means homeless people or children who are outside of their family at home for 18 or 20 hours a day or something. So obviously children with serious family problems. And over the years, Barclays have made numerous donations to the Clinton Foundation and Clinton Global Initiative, and they were both deeply involved with Haiti, still are. I've recently sent a Freedom of Information Act request to Parliament to get the emails that were sent from Epstein to Parliament blackmailing them. Let me show you their response.
Wow, I've just realised that this has huge implications, doesn't it? This has absolutely huge implications for the UK's banking industry.
Oh, definitely for Barclays at the very least. But they write back to me. Okay, so they're basically saying we're neither going to confirm nor deny that the House of Commons holds the emails. And then they say any information held by the House of Commons relevant to your request is withheld under the Section 34 Act. So basically they're making themselves exempt, but they deny, but neither confirm nor deny the emails exist.
Oh.
I mean, that would be like a slander of, that would be like slander, wouldn't it, if those emails didn't exist? I mean, the Daily Mail says, well, the Times said that the mails exist, the emails exist, which would be a slander on the honesty of all of the journalists involved if those emails didn't exist.
Or even like.
So we can assume that the emails do exist, but Parliament is refusing to disclose them. So
and to acknowledge their existence even.
They won't even acknowledge that they exist. And they'll say Section 34 exempts information from disclosure to avoid infringement of the privilege of the House.
So they're above the law. This is parliamentary privilege. They can withhold any information that they deem fit.
That's right. So they can keep paedophile blackmail rings a secret. That's their privilege.
Oh my gosh.
And at the same time, they want to get rid of certain MPs as part of this Coal Beech exercise.
Now, for the benefit of the people listening, they may not be familiar with the Coal Beech court case. Would you like to explain who Coal Beech is and what happened for his day in court?
Okay, let me just bring something up. Okay, the Coal Beech seems to be something that the Daily Mail like to report on. You have this guy, Coal Beech, who they call a fantasist, who is alleging various instances of abuse by such as Ted Heath and Lord Janner. Then the police decide that he was telling fibs. So he goes to court, gets, I think it's 18-year prison sentence.
18 years? Because they say he's falsely accused these people.
Yeah, that's a bit steep. And it turns out there's about 22 independent individuals making allegations against Lord Janner. But because Coal Beech is one of them, the family of Janner are demanding an apology for the wrongdoing. So
could you?
This looks like he's been handpicked and told which names to name to discredit various investigations, so that no one will make any accusations against the likes of Janner, Harvey Proctor, or Ted Heath. So it's it looks rigged. I don't know whether it was rigged from the beginning or they just let it go on and on because they decide to make use of it. But it looks like Operation Midland is a total psyop just to get all these people off the hook by creating this narrative that any accusations against politicians must be hysteria or fantasy of the form that came out of the mind of Coal Beech.
Does this mean then, with double jeopardy, these people cannot be tried for the same crime again?
Well, Janner's dead, and obviously, if he was alive, he couldn't probably be tried on the basis of whatever Beech would have claimed. But of course, any independent individuals who were raped or alleged rape would have that they would be classified as separate crimes, wouldn't they? Same class of crime, but separate crimes.
Where is Beech now?
I presume he's in prison. But I think, unfortunately for the elite, all of this stuff came out right in the middle of the Epstein revelations. So it's basically being dwarfed, and they wanted to create this narrative, but the narrative falls flat because Epstein shows, well, you can see that there's only 47 comments, and the moderator has to comment everything in advance. So if you look at the kind of comments, you get 800 upticks on this one, and there's absolutely no replies to it. So these up to, look at all of these: 800 up, 800 up, 600, 600, 600. It's almost as if these figures have been generated by a computer with several hundred fake client nodes. So basically MI5 would click uptick, and then you have these 800 computers all submit to the Daily Mail an uptick. Does that make sense?
Yes, and looking at those responses you've just shown us, it's not meaty stuff that people are commenting with.
That's
They're not
right.
posting any other stories that can link in. It just says, you know, plods at their best. It's a bit inane, really, isn't it?
That comment section looks like it's been totally fabricated alongside the story itself.
Oh, it's certainly been cleaned up to make it look skewed in a certain way. Yes, for sure.
Yeah. So you could say that Beech, although he didn't get paid anything, you could say he was you could say he was like paid opposition, in that he's given an investigation all to himself called Operation Midland that undermines the police force. But who's running that investigation? The police force.
Well, that's what happens when you have a complaint with your local police force. You actually have to correspond with that same person in the police force. They have a complaints department of one, and that person then goes and speaks to the police person that you've been dealing with, and then they report back and say there were no mistakes made, and that's their investigation.
Sure. And if you look at the review sites for all of these government departments, you find time and time again you'll have 99% disapproval ratings. So the FCA, the ICO, Action Fraud, they all get typically 1 star out of 1 star out of 5 in the vast majority of cases. And then the CEO will basically go onto the website and give it an excellent review. So this is symptomatic of all these government departments set up to fail, which means the complaint departments must be set up to fail.
Is the Financial Conduct Authority, that's funded by premiums, isn't it, from the various insurance companies and banks?
I'm not sure, but what I do know is that when they fine someone, and this includes a serious fraud office, the money goes straight to the Treasury. It doesn't go to fund further investigations. So the more successful they are at getting investigations, the less money they've got to spend, because they're not getting a return on any of those fines.
That reminds me of the Thames Valley Police Crime Commissioner when they put 6 banksters in jail. It cost the police authority so many millions, but they actually only got a small proportion of that back from central funding. So it's always a disincentive for other police forces in the future to do further investigative work.
Sure, and you can imagine if they've got money at the end of their yearly budget, then that goes on parties and hi-fi improvements in the vehicles and stuff like that.
Right, okay.
Now, I'd like to get on to the Robin Hood Foundation. And
who was Robin Hood? He stole from the rich to give to the poor. So why do we think this foundation was called the Robin Hood Foundation?
And the name is very similar to the Zorro Foundation, which is basically working out of what I believe is the Zorro Ranch, that apparently won one of the state lotteries in the USA when the electronics failed. So that it does appear that he used his blackmail ring to basically even rig state lotteries, which is incredible.
Oh my gosh! They were winning. So basically, they've robbed from the poor to give to the rich paedophiles.
Let's have a look. Zorro Foundation lottery. Have you not heard this story?
No, I haven't.
Hidden Epstein record. Well, he would hide it, records like that, wouldn't you? He wouldn't. So Epstein won $41 million on the Oklahoma lottery jackpot, and it just so happened they had a computer failure, and they had to do the lottery draw in secret. So the results are published, but the actual process of drawing the balls, that was held in secret. And Epstein wins, yeah. So that's the Zorro Foundation for you.
So there was only one ticket in the draw then, and it happened to be Epstein's.
It happened to be Epstein's, yes. So anyway, so let's have a look into this Robin Hood Foundation.
That has serious implications, doesn't it? About where the lottery money goes in this country.
If you look
we don't know, do we?
If you look where it goes, it's basically Marxists and other fake charities for the elite. Okay, this is an article from Vanity Fair. This is a link to in my document on Epstein. And what this does is expose two people, Glenn and Eva Dubin or Dubin. Okay, so you have these two characters.
Man and wife?
Man and wife, yes. She used to be a Swedish model. Apparently she knew Epstein before meeting this man, Glenn Dubin. And Epstein introduced her to him. Well, we know from Epstein's tastes that he doesn't touch girls older than 16 or so. So he must have introduced this Eva to Glenn as basically one of his child victims. Glenn met Epstein through his wife. The wife is a doctor and former Miss Sweden.
And man and wife are both Jewish, I see.
I think so, yes. Anderson was reportedly dating Epstein for years. Epstein became very close to this Dubin, and Epstein's the godfather of Glenn's 3 children. Well, normally Jews don't have godfathers, but I suppose Epstein's a godfather in more than one way, isn't he?
Yes.
And says a person who knows Dubin well says he's tight with him. So obviously he didn't want to talk about Epstein behind Epstein's back. Well, you wouldn't with that kind of relationship. Now, it turned out that Dubin was a person selling contracts to JP Morgan and it was Epstein who had been basically liaising between the two. So when we say that Epstein was gifting contracts to JP Morgan, it was the likes of the billionaire Dubin, in fact Dubin himself, who'd been giving money to JP Morgan, or dealing with JP Morgan, via Epstein. We can presume that Staley was involved, signing off those contracts and overriding the auditors. Because obviously from this story, this Dubin is deeply involved. When they are caught out, they say they are horrified by the new allegations about Jeffrey Epstein. Not horrified about the old allegations, but the new allegations. But the new allegations are the old allegations. He just got off lightly, didn't he? And the case was reopened because he got off far too lightly. So this Dubin is actually the founder of the Robin Hood Foundation, but the money he was making seems very strongly connected with Epstein. So this would cause us to suspect the Robin Hood Foundation of not being what it says it is. Okay, so let's have a look at a Robin Hood Foundation video. This is on YouTube. Actually, let's just have a look at the channel first. So I want to convince people that there's, when I speak of Robin Hood, obviously that's a common name, so we don't want to get mixed up in our organisations. But as you can see, that it's a so-called charity, brown face, white face, brown 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 face. Looks like a Jewish face, brown face, brown face. So this is a charity that focuses on black people, which is fair enough. Nothing wrong with a charity for a given group of people. But let's have a look at this video. Bear in mind that it's supposedly for black people. So obviously they're talking about the charity. Can you hear the sound on that?
No.
Okay, you can't hear the sound, but what you have is a group of white executives, all from these banking organisations, and all they ever talk about is business. There's not the slightest mention of charity, and of course they don't invite any black people to share the stage. So that's odd that it's all focused on black people, but there's no black people allowed on their stage, and all of these people are white elitists. So that's a bit odd. Let's look a bit further. Okay, we've got a group, HaitianRefugees.com. Now, Caroline, guess what's on? Try and have a guess at what their webpage would look like, given that it's called Haitian Refugees, and guess where it'd be run from.
Well, you would expect it to be run from Haiti, and you'd expect, I mean, I'd probably think of desert islands, but
okay.
Tell me it's run from Washington or New York or the City of London.
Well, you'd expect it just to be about Haitian refugees, wouldn't you?
Yes.
Okay, Haitian Women for Haitian Refugees. So it's given the name Haitian Refugees, but it's actually a woman's group. And I don't think there's an equivalent men's group. So this group for Haitian women,
New York,
yeah, is fighting for racial justice. There's actually no mention of an earthquake here. Okay, so it was founded in 1992. This is well before the earthquake. For Haitian refugees and immigrants fleeing persecution. But there's actually no reference of an earthquake. So that doesn't occur to them that there might be some refugees because there's a massive earthquake and everything is destroyed. If you look at who's funding that, we've got this Robin Hood Foundation. And as you can see, it's says Haitian women, but it's all run in Brooklyn and New York. So send your money to New York. And what this is about is moving women, because there's no, this isn't a charity for men, from Haiti. Yep.
Yeah.
To New York, which basically men aren't as good as carers as women in the family, usually. So this kind of creates an orphan crisis in Haiti. This was before the earthquake, because it focuses on women. So if it focused on the...
Why are women being transferred over to New York? Because I thought it was the children. Are the fathers left behind in Haiti with the children?
I would figure the fathers and the children.
Right.
I mean, if the women are running off to be immigrants, if they're migrating as refugees to New York, then they're probably going to leave the children behind.
Well, I'm sure some of the fathers are just as good parents as the mums, but it seems very strange that the breakdown of the family unit in this way.
Yeah.
Why is this happening? As you say, there's no mention of any natural disasters. Fleeing persecution. Since when has there been any persecution in Haiti?
I don't know, but they say they struggle for social, economic, and racial justice. Well, this is basically a charity not for people in Haiti. I can't pronounce it. Haiti. It's not a charity for them. It's a charity for people living in New York. So what do they tell people? What do they tell these Haitians in New York? What you want is racial justice. So that basically it's an anti-white charity. Rightly or wrongly, it's an anti-white charity founded by this Robin Hood Foundation. And if you saw that video, it was basically sponsored by JP Morgan. So JP Morgan are funding this lot. Let's have a look at some of the other groups that are involved.
Do we know who's behind, for example, the Petra Foundation or Open Meadows Foundation?
Petra Foundation is set up after the death of a deceased Jewish lawyer. Let's have a look. This is...
of course, we've got the law fraternity involved in this.
Okay, now the New York Foundation Group. Guess what their webpage looks like?
The bankers.
No. This is...
Does it look like
New York Women's Foundation Group. Okay, so you think, okay, it's for women.
Right, okay. So have you got pictures of women? But no, you've got... Oh, yes, there we go.
So black, Asian, black, probably lesbian. Black, 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 probably a lesbian. Black, 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 black. So obviously they call themselves a New York Women's Foundation, but it's actually not just any old woman, it's for black women. You can tell, that's what they're selling themselves for.
Right, okay. So we advance equality, yep.
Yeah, so they call themselves a Women's Foundation Group, but if you look at the kind of things that they run, a snapshot of anti-lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, I don't know what Q stands for, hate and violence during Pride season. So this is a, well, it's a purely political entity, as you can see. Let's go, let's look at that.
So basically, who does get the money then?
Okay, this is another donator. So guess what Miller Reaper is about, if they are funding that kind of organisation? You'll never guess.
Go on.
American non-profit organisation that raises money for Tibetan independence.
So where's the connection between Tibetan independence and black women living in New York State?
Exactly.
Why do they need to put the money into New York?
So they've taken money to free the Tibetans, and then they've given that money to some political group that goes under the front of New York Women's Foundation. So that's a misappropriation, isn't it? And if I was donating money to that, I'd be thinking that it'd go to kind of create websites for the Tibetans.
Yes.
And instead it goes on to a completely different cause.
Yes, I mean, surely these foundations, these charities, the money should just be for the name of that charity. If it's about a particular country or about a particular group of people, not then go being passed from pillar to post.
Okay.
It's really hard for the accounting system, isn't it? Gosh.
I'm going to have to stop the video here.
Mm.
And then we'll have to continue later on.
Okay. It's tea time.
Yeah.